past president of the IFOA. I'm pleased to introduce to you today Matt Battersby, who is the Chief Behavioural Scientist at RGA based in the UK. Matt tells me he's been working in this area for about 7 years, and his main role is to assist his firm and their clients with developing solutions based around behavioural science. His first degree was economics, and he followed up with a master's program, an MSc in Behavioural Science from the London School of Economics. I'm pleased to introduce our speaker, Matt Battersby.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming and hearing me talk today. I'm planning to discuss behavioural science and how it can be applied to the insurance industry, particularly the life and health industry where I work. My intention is that I'll spend a few minutes just talking through some of the key principles of behavioural science, how people think and make decisions, and how that enables us to better understand, better predict, and better change behaviour. And then I'm going to talk about two specific challenges. One is, how do we get people to be more honest and accurate when we apply for insurance? So we know there's a gap between what people say and what people do. So can we use behavioural science to help close that? And then second, I'll talk about post-purchase behaviours. So in this context, health behaviours. How do we encourage people to live healthier lives and make them a better risk for life and health insurance, but also help them achieve their goals? So that's what I'll cover. I think it's probably worth it to spend a minute explaining what behavioural science is. I'm sure many of you know or have heard the term, you may have heard the term behavioural economics instead. They're roughly the same thing, behavioural science and behavioural economics. Behavioural science is broader, behavioural economics is a part of behavioural science. But for us, it's mostly behavioural economics that we're interested in. So why do people make the economic type decisions that they do? And really, behavioural economics came out of economics started to come out about 30 years ago, as some economists started to question why their models don't always accurately capture what really happens, question why their predictions don't always come true. And for anyone who knows anything about economics, which I'm sure is most people here, you'll know that one reason is there are often quite strong assumptions at the heart of many economic models. So in lots of models, we like to assume that people are perfectly rational human beings going through our daily lives, maximising our utility and making great long-term decisions. You don't need to be a behavioural scientist to know that's not always the case. So what behavioural economics does is it kind of sits at the intersection of economics, but with psychology, neuroscience, sociology, the kind of the human sciences, and really looks at how can we apply that knowledge to economic type decisions. So how can we create policies, products, communications based on how people really do think and behave, rather than how we would like them to think or behave, or how we think they should think or behave. So that really is what behavioural science is about, is understanding that and allowing us to make those better predictions. The reason why this is important is we all know that people act in ways that seem surprising or rational. Consumers don't always switch to cheaper or better products. Businesses continue to invest in products or business units well after they become profitable. We know that investors often sell low and buy high and follow the crowd. And we all know we probably don't eat or exercise as well as we should do. So really we're trying to understand that. And a good way to start with that is just to ask yourself a question. An apt question, I think, given the amount of food that I've seen out there earlier. How many decisions do you think you'll make today about food? Does anyone want to make a guess about how many decisions they'll make today about food? 100. Okay, anyone else? Okay, not a bad guess. There's been lots of studies looking into the decisions we make about food, trying to understand obesity, why we eat more than we should. When you survey people, on average, people think they make about 15 decisions a day about food. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, what, when, how much, those types of decisions. In reality, on average, people make about 225 decisions a day about food. So almost 15 times as many as they think they do, even more than double the high estimate you gave there. So why is that? Why are there so many decisions that we don't realise we're making? Well, the reason is that so many decisions we make about food are unconscious decisions. So think about your daily routine. I mean, imagine when you're driving to work, you will go past numerous places where you could get something to eat if you wanted to. You don't stop outside each place. You don't stop thinking, am I hungry? No. Drive on a few metres. Am I hungry now? No. Go carry on doing the same thing. But you do see these places. Your brain processes the information. And you just make a subconscious decision, I'm not hungry, I don't want to stop. And that's the point. There are so many decisions that you're not consciously aware of. And those are decisions that we really try to understand. Now, the reason why there are so many decisions like this is it's estimated that your brain is bombarded by about 11 million bits of information per second. So through all your senses, sight, sound, smell, etc., all this information is coming in every second. But unfortunately, your conscious brain can only process about 40 bits of information per second. So only a tiny proportion of all this information that's coming through can your brain consciously process. So what does it do? Well, it can't ignore all that other information. There may be information vital for your survival in that other 11 million bits. But also it can't process it. It just physically can't do it. If it tried to, it would crash just like a website does when it's bombarded with people and information. So what our brains have evolved to do over thousands of years is to use shortcuts. So in psychology they're called heuristics. They're shortcuts that your brain uses to help make good decisions based on all this information that's coming through. So your brain looks for patterns, looks for associations to make quick decisions. In effect, what you could say your brain does is it joins the dots. So you have limited information, but most brains are very good at seeing patterns. So for people who can't see it, it's a picture of a duck. You've got the beak on the right, you've got the eye at the top, you've got the legs at the bottom. And that's the point, our brains are brilliant at seeing shortcuts that help us make decisions. The problem is that sometimes shortcuts aren't that great. We see things that aren't really there. Our brain joins the dots incorrectly. So is that a duck, or have you shifted it that way? Is it a rabbit? So you've got, that becomes the tail, that becomes the feet, that becomes the eye at the top. So that's the thing, your brain is using shortcuts all the time. 95% of the time they're brilliant, often they're not. And what we're trying to understand is, when you're making a decision which we think isn't optimal, it's called a bias. So a shortcut leads to a bias. And what we're trying to understand is, when we see a decision we think is in your best long-term interest, what shortcuts are you using? Can we encourage you not to use shortcuts, or to use different shortcuts to get to a better decision? A tiny bit of the terminology just to help explain this. It's commonly accepted that the best way to understand how we think and make decisions is as if we had two systems operating in our brain at any one time. And anyone who knows anything about behavioural science will be familiar with this. So system one is your fast, automatic, effortless, more emotional, more conscious way of thinking. Think of it as your Homer Simpson type brain. And then you have your system two, which is your slower, more thoughtful, more deliberative, more conscious, more classically rational way of thinking. So think of it as your Sherlock Holmes type brain. A couple of important points about this. One is you use your system one much more than you think you do. So think back to those food decisions you make every day. The vast majority of those decisions are system one. They're quick, they're unconscious, they're emotionally driven. Number two, using your system two is effort. It takes both mental and physical effort to use your system two. So your brain will avoid using it if it can. I think the best example of system one and system two is probably for those who can drive or have tried to learn to drive in the past. Think back to that moment when you were first learning, just how much conscious mental effort it takes to learn to drive, to be able to steer while also looking at everything around you, checking your mirrors and everything. It takes up so much system two, you can't do anything else. You can't talk to the person next to you, you can't listen to the radio, you can't even think about anything else. But as you become more experienced, it becomes system one type thing, it becomes habitual. So you can think about your day at work, you can talk to someone on the phone, you can listen to the radio, you can do lots of other things. I think we've all been in a situation where we've driven for a few kilometres and suddenly realise you can't remember where you've gone. Did I stop at those traffic lights? Did I turn that corner? It's become pure system one way of thinking. Now, sometimes when I talk to people about this, they go, okay, great, we understand that. We've always known that consumers aren't completely rational. This is what advertising has been based on for the last 100 years or so. We know you don't have someone in the supermarket spending 10 minutes working out what soap powder they're going to buy. We know people make quick decisions. But the important point about this is it's not just consumer behaviour, it is human behaviour. We all use system 1 and system 2 all of the time. So you're not Homer Simpson when you're in the supermarket and then Sherlock Holmes when you walk into work in the morning. We're all human. A good example of this, an audience I like to pick because it's an audience we hope is very rational, or needs making very rational decisions, is judges. The white wig, this is what a lot of people, this is what judges wear in the UK, to explain that. Research looked at decisions that judges make about granting, general decisions that judges make. This specific study looked at judges' decisions about granting prisoners parole. So you've completed your minimum term in prison, it's up to a judge to decide whether they let you out or not. When they analysed these decisions, thousands of decisions to see if there's any patterns, they saw there was a pattern, which is represented on the graph. So on the top axis you have likelihood of being granted parole, and then down the bottom you have time of day. So these two big changes in the middle, that's lunchtime and the afternoon tea break. You are much less likely to be granted parole in the hour before lunchtime than the hour after breakfast. Now why is this? Well, there are a few reasons, but none of the reasons really explain the kind of big difference you see. And the hypothesis is actually that granting a prisoner parole, letting them out of jail, is just a more difficult decision. So as judges become tired, as their system 2, their Sherlock Holmes brain becomes depleted, they just resort to the easier decision. What's the quick, easy decision to make? Obviously, when they presented this research to judges, they said, oh, absolutely no, we use exactly the same process as we do all the other time of day. There's something quite compelling there. And anyone who's been in a business meeting for more than an hour will know that the longer you go on, the more people just make quick, easy decisions because they just want to get out of the meeting when they're tired. I think we can all see this. So we're all human. I'm afraid to say even actuaries are humans too. It's everyone. Now, this is an example of the shortcut leads to bias. I've talked about biases. Bias is what most behavioural scientists spend most of their day looking at. So understanding the reasons why people behave in the way they do. This graph up here, I deliberately put it up so you can't read it. This is the point. This is just one of the lists of all the different biases that behavioural science are researching and talking about at the moment. It's a very rich and popular area of research at the moment. I was just going to pick on one because I think it's just very relevant for our industry, and that's a heuristic, a shortcut called availability, which often leads to a bias. Now, availability is one shortcut that people often use to make decisions about risk. And obviously, that's our industry. How do people make decisions about risk and reward? We would like to think that they act like economists do, and they work out all the things that could happen, what's the probability of those things happening, what's the consequences of all those things happening, calculate that and then work out whether they should buy insurance. That is not how most people make decisions about insurance. I don't think it's how anyone makes decisions about insurance. They use different shortcuts. One example is the availability. All that means is the more available something is to my brain, so the easier it is to recall, or easier it is to remember, the more likely I think it is to happen. So if I can remember something happening, I think it's likely to happen again. So this is why you see insurance go up after natural disasters. People buy life insurance when a friend or family member has died, because suddenly the risk seems more available. I can imagine it happening, I can remember it happening. The risk hasn't changed, but my perception of risk has changed. So a shortcut that exists in our industry. Now, my general contention is that within our industry, we have our own bias, and it's what I call our Sherlock Holmes bias. Now, what I mean by that is that too often we are creating our products, our policies, our communications, assuming we are talking to someone's system too. We're talking to their Sherlock Holmes brain. Because we think something's important, because we're spending time thinking about it, we think other people are as well. They're devoting their system to something that we think is important. And whilst that is sometimes the case, it is often not the case. And this is what we want to do. So, applying this understanding of behavioural science across the field, there are lots of challenges that we might want to apply this to. Looking at the life and health in the industry where I work at, this is just some of the behaviours we look at. So in the sales process, lots of things about sales and marketing. So the first one there, inadequate demand at reasonable premiums. Life and health insurance, on the whole, is good economic value. People underinsure for it. People over-insure for other things. So people over-insure for mobile phone insurance and things like that. But for this kind of product, people under-insure. Now, I'm not going to talk about that today. We're doing lots of work on that. Really interesting area of research. What I'm going to talk about is two other areas, though, which is the middle bit, so the underwriting process, inaccurate disclosures. So I talked about that. How do we get people to be honest and accurate? And then also, post-purchase, what can we do about unhealthy lifestyles and behaviours? So how can we reduce the risk in our portfolio and help customers live longer, healthier lives? So let's start with closing the disclosure gap. So as I mentioned, we know there's a gap between what people say and the reality. So how do we go about changing that? Well, the first thing we need to do is actually understand what behaviour we are talking about here. What I first heard when I came into work in this industry was people talk about this gap, they say it's lying. That's the behaviour we want to change. And that lying is either it's organised, criminal, determined frauds to lying, or it's the individual, the people are doing it for economic reasons. They're doing it to ensure coverage or to reduce premium. A very rational reason why people would lie. Now that's undoubtedly true. It's only part of the picture. So first of all, there is other types of lying. People lie to themselves. They don't do it for financial benefit, they do it for psychological benefit. Sometimes I won't admit how much I smoke or drink or weigh, not because I think it's going to save me a few cents on my insurance policy, because I just don't want to admit, I don't want to admit to myself, let alone to you, how much I weigh. Perhaps I've got weight in the last year. I haven't gone near any scales because I just don't want to know that answer. So there's other types of lying that we have to look at. And also there's unintentional inaccuracy. People make mistakes. People forget. Again, we may use our system to write these application forms. It doesn't mean people are using the system to answer them. So we're asking too much from memory and too much from accuracy. So what we've been looking at is how can we make it easier to be accurate and harder to lie? And we've done a lot of research in this area in the last couple of years or so. We've just completed our biggest study to date, where we've an experiment with 20,000 people around the world, so 10 different markets, including India, where we took some of the most common questions where you see disclosure gaps, so alcohol, smoking, family history, medical history, etc. And what we did is we got participants to complete a healthy living questionnaire. They didn't realise it was anything to do with life insurance, it was just a standard questionnaire. And they also paid to complete the questionnaire. But they were also told if they scored highly and got a high health score, they would open up the second part of the questionnaire. And they would be paid additional money for those questions. So what we're doing is we're recreating that financial rational incentive to lie. And then using different versions of questions to see which is most successful. So I'm going to talk through some of the findings we've got there, some of the practical steps we can take to actually change disclosure behaviour. So the first one, the most important thing is you've got to start people accurately and honestly. So think about how you start the process of asking people questions. Lots of research in the last couple of years about honesty statements. So before you get someone to complete an application, get them to state their honesty at the start. So rather than having it at the end, do you promise you are honest? Have it at the beginning, so it influences your behaviour afterwards. So that I think is quite well understood in the industry. What we want to look at is, does phrasing matter? Does different words matter for those honesty statements? Because often, you see these statements are just replications of the legal statement that you used to have at the end, that now you have at the start. And that means you get language such as certify, as the kind of language that's used. We thought, well, that has no real resonance for people. How about language such as promise and truth? We found by using language such as this, rather than more legalistic language, you could increase both the average disclosures that you've got, but also it led to people dropping out of the process. We had about, not huge numbers, about 1.5% of people dropped out of this process because they just know they can't be honest and accurate. So they're almost self-selecting, saying, I can't promise this. And the reason is words such as promise and truth have more emotional resonance. I promise to be truthful to other people in other contexts, so it has more weight. Second part of that is actually think about what questions you ask at the start. The common question you see asked at the start of application forms is height and weight question, because we think it's an easy question to answer. Actually, it's a very hard question for many people. People don't weigh themselves very frequently, they don't measure themselves very frequently. And whilst your height might not vary, your weight can vary quite a lot. And as we talked about, there are psychological reasons why I might not want to admit how much I weigh. So it's actually a very difficult question for many people. And we found through some of our research that when you have that question at the start of an application form, not only do you get more people drop out, it's a difficult question, but also it influences their other questions, their answers later on. Because if you know you've started off being honest and inaccurate, it may contaminate your later questions as well. So make sure you have easy questions at the start of an application form, not hard questions. So that's all about how you start. Next is actually about the questions themselves. And the key thing here is looking at how we simplify questions. Now, a lot of people I talk about in the industry kind of talk about how we need fewer questions. You know, we don't need 30, we don't need 10, we don't need 5, we need 3. 3 questions is all we want. And that's fine, I agree, fewer questions is good. But the risk is sometimes that by asking fewer questions, all we're doing is actually putting like 2 or 3 questions into one. So we have fewer questions, but they're more difficult. So for example, this question, I'll have some water before I drink this. Have you ever had, or been told that you have, or under current investigation for, cancer, carcinoma in situ, tumour, lump, cyst, polyp, growth of any kind, or liver disease? This is a genuine question we took from an application form. That takes a lot of system too, just to read the question, let alone answer it. By the time I've got to the end of the question, I can't remember what the question is, and I can't remember all the conditions. So what we tried instead is just breaking those up. So just ask me about each condition. Have you ever had cancer? Yes or no? Have you ever had tumour? Yes or no? It's more questions, and it's easier questions. What the consumer wants is simplicity. Make it easy for me to answer. Third then is about not just the questions you ask, but the options you give people. So I talked about that lots of people make mistakes just because they forget. They don't know the answer, or they don't really want to use the energy to answer the question. So one thing we look at is how can we prompt people's memories. A great example of this is alcohol questions. I think one of the most difficult questions we ask people is, you know, on average, how much alcohol do you drink a week? It's an awful question. What do we mean by average? Over what time period? The last month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 10 years? Even say the last year. Are we really saying to someone, I want you to remember every single drink you've had in the last year, then divide by 52 to get the average? No one is ever going to get, no one knows that answer. We're asking a question no one knows the answer to. So one thing we do is, how can we just help you come to that answer, help prompt your memory? So rather than asking how many drinks do you have, or how much alcohol do you drink, ask per drink. So how many bottles of beer do you have, how many pints of beer do you have, how many glasses of wine? Just help my memory. Someone will then go through the process and say, well, I always have that pint of beer after football on a Tuesday, I always have that glass of wine when I come home on a Friday. Just help people go through their routine and help them remember. Now, alcohol's interesting though, because it's not just a question of memory for a lot of people. It's also often a question of stigma, so like psychological pain. So perhaps I don't want to admit how much I drink. Perhaps I know how much I drink, but I know it's the wrong answer and don't want to admit that. So one of the things we looked at is, can we change that? Can we make you feel more able to admit how much you drink, reduce the stigma around it, normalise that behaviour? One thing we tested was providing sliding scales. So rather than give someone a free text box, give them a scale, which they can move. And we found that not only do scales get higher disclosure in free text, but the higher the scale, the higher the disclosure. Now why is that? Well, say I drink 10 pints of beer a week, which I know is too much. If it's a free text box, I don't want to put 10 in. And if it's a scale that only goes up to 10, that must be the top of the scale. But if the scale goes up to 20, well, there must be people who drink more than that. They wouldn't put that scale that high if that was bad behaviour. I feel okay to admit it. So reducing the stigma in those questions. We've also applied this to other kind of stigmatised behaviours. So for example, smoking. I think smoking is sometimes one of the worst questions we ask. We need to make it very binary. So we say, have you smoked in the past 12 months, yes or no? Now, a couple of problems about that. One, it's very obvious what the wrong answer is there. You know, if I am acting rationally, it's very clear what I should and shouldn't say. Secondly, there's a bit of sort of stigma around that. Perhaps I only smoke 1 or 2 cigarettes a day. I don't want to be categorised as someone who smokes 40 cigarettes a day. One, that's unfair, so I know that I will be penalised financially for it. But also, just socially, I don't see myself as like someone who smokes 40 cigarettes a day. I'm not a smoker. I smoke now and again, but I'm not a smoker. It's not my identity. So what we look at instead is asking the question, how many cigarettes a day do you smoke? please confirm how many cigarettes they smoke. Just changing that question, assuming someone does that behaviour to help normalise it. So provide the option for another. If you don't smoke, then great, that's one of the options. But there are multiple options for saying yes. And importantly, there's multiple high-frequency options. So if I smoke 1 or 2 cigarettes a day, well, you know, I'm below average on that scale. So just helping people to feel more comfortable about it, being able to admit what they do and don't do. And just to say that applies the same to drugs as well. So asking people, when did you last take a drug, rather than just have you ever taken a drug. But then finally, this part, disclosures, asking people twice. Now this might seem really odd. We're trying to reduce the number of questions. Why would we ask a question twice? Well, if we're really interested in disclosures, sometimes asking twice does get a better response. And a couple of reasons for that. One is you just maybe engage someone's system to go, this must be an important question, let me really think about this. But also, perhaps people feel that they're being watched, or they've asked me twice, they must know I've given an inaccurate answer, I better give the right answer this time. So one of the questions we looked at was around weight. We know it's a question that people often answer inaccurately. It's a very hard question to ask differently. There's not different ways you can ask how much do you weigh. But what we looked at was, can we change the way that someone gives the answer? So again, using scales, we tried that, it works, it improves it. But then what we did is, when we asked you that question, we asked you a second question, which was, we recognise that not everyone weighs themselves regularly, so it's not always easy to find an accurate figure. If you've not weighed yourself within the last week, please highlight which of the following is true. I think I weigh a little bit more. I think I weigh a little bit less. I'm confident this is my exact weight. So first of all, think about the question. We kind of empathised with you there. We said that we know people make mistakes. We know that everyone doesn't weigh themselves.